The Roman Empire was one of the most powerful and expansive civilizations in history, and its reach extended across much of Europe, North Africa, and West Asia. Around the Mediterranean, the Romans built cities, roads, ports, and fortifications to maintain their hold over conquered territories. Their military campaigns pushed further and further across the known world, seeking land resources and power. Yet when the Romans looked southward into Africa, they encountered both opportunities and obstacles. Their frontier in this direction ended where the Great Sahara Desert began. This vast, arid, and largely uninhabitable expanse of land acted as a natural barrier. It protected Rome from invasion by southern civilizations, but it also prevented deeper expansion into the African continent. Despite these difficulties, the Romans did attempt to go beyond this border, and they launched a number of expeditions into sub-Saharan Africa between 19 BCE and 90 CE. These missions were often motivated by the desire to secure valuable trade goods, establish reliable trade routes, and expand Roman influence. Trade was one of the major reasons for Roman interest in Africa. From the earliest days of empire, merchants carried goods between North Africa and Rome. African ivory, gold, exotic animals, and slaves were highly prized commodities. The Romans relied heavily on African grain, particularly from Egypt, which was annexed into the empire after the defeat and death of Cleopatra VII in 30 BCE. North African provinces became some of the wealthiest and most productive in the empire, with great coastal cities like Leptis Magna Sabratha and Oea serving as important trade hubs. Merchants from deeper within Africa would bring their goods northward and sell them to Roman traders. These goods included gold from West Africa, ivory from elephants, exotic animals used for gladiatorial games, and rare spices. Rome wanted more direct control over these resources, and the rulers in the capital were eager to cut out middlemen. However, the trade routes passing through desert tribes were frequently disrupted by conflict raids and local rivalries. One such people who played a role in this complex trade network were the Garamantes, a Berber tribe living in the Fezzan region of modern Libya. They controlled territory in the central Sahara and sometimes interfered with Roman commerce. Roman writers sometimes accused them of raiding caravans that carried goods to the coast. Whether or not they were directly involved in West African trade is still debated by historians, but their activities drew Rome's attention. This tension set the stage for one of the first Roman expeditions across the desert. In 19 BCE, Lucius Cornelius Balbus was serving as proconsul of Africa under Augustus Caesar. He led a force of 10,000 legionaries from the city of Sabratha to deal with the Garamantes. After defeating them, he pushed his men further south beyond the Hagar Mountains. His soldiers claimed to have reached a great river which some believe was the Niger. Roman coins and artifacts have been discovered in this region, which supports the idea that his men may have indeed gone this far. However, scholars still debate the accuracy of these claims. Some argue that the reports were exaggerated, while others believe the evidence shows genuine contact. Regardless, this campaign was one of the earliest serious Roman attempts to penetrate the Sahara and explore the lands beyond. Another major expedition came 2 generations. Later in 41 CE, the Roman commander Suetonius Paulinus led his men across the Atlas Mountains in southern Mauritania. This was the first recorded crossing of the Atlas by Europeans. According to the natural historian Pliny, Paulinus and his troops spent 10 days marching before reaching the summit, and from there descended into the plains beyond. They traveled along rivers known as the Gur and the Daras, which are believed to correspond to the modern Senegal River. Archaeological finds, including Roman coins and artifacts in the region, support the idea that Paulinus genuinely reached deep into West Africa. His march showed the lengths Rome was willing to go to extend influence, even into unfamiliar and difficult terrain. By 50 CE, another figure named Septimius Flaccus was active in North Africa. Though little is known about him, Flaccus commanded forces against tribes who were disrupting trade in Garamantian territory. After defeating them, he crossed the Tibesti Mountains and moved into a region called Agasimba. This area was described as lying north of a great body of water filled with hippopotamuses and rhinoceroses. Modern scholars identify this body of water as Lake Chad, which at the time was far larger than it is today. Flaccus's journey marked the first recorded Roman contact with this region. Unfortunately, records do not provide detail about the people he encountered there. What is clear is that Roman troops and explorers were willing to travel extraordinary distances through harsh landscapes to gain knowledge of African geography and resources. Some 20 years later, in the 70s CE, a man named Julius Maternus embarked on another expedition. His role is unclear, and he might have been a diplomat, a merchant, or a general. What is certain is that he traveled in the company of the Garamantian king, which suggests friendly relations at this time. His journey followed routes taken by earlier expeditions crossing the Tibesti Mountains into Agasimba and perhaps reaching the Niger River. His account also mentioned Lake Chad and the exotic animals found there. Some versions of the story claim that he even brought a two-horned rhinoceros back to Rome, which would have amazed the citizens of the empire. Whatever his true purpose, Maternus's expedition illustrates the blend of political, commercial, and exploratory motives. Behind Roman interest in sub-Saharan Africa, the Romans were not only interested in the western routes across the Sahara, they also looked southward from Egypt toward Nubia and Ethiopia. Trade between the Nile Valley and sub-Saharan Africa had existed for centuries long before Rome arrived. Gold, ivory, and slaves were transported northward through Nubian kingdoms. Roman emperors desired to secure these routes and possibly conquer new lands. In 62 CE, during the reign of Nero, a special expedition was launched to find the source of the Nile. 2 centurions were sent southward with guides and camels. They traveled beyond modern Sudan into territory that was largely unknown to Europeans at the time. Their mission was partly geographical and partly economic, since the Romans hoped to discover rich gold deposits along the upper Nile, though they did not succeed in conquering Nubia. Their journey marked another attempt to expand Roman knowledge and reach deeper into Africa. All these expeditions between 19 BCE and 90 CE shared common themes. They were always supported by Roman soldiers, even when framed as diplomatic or commercial missions. Their goals often combined security with profit, since Rome wanted to protect its provinces and also secure direct access to goods. The expeditions sometimes succeeded in forging alliances, as in the case of Julius Maternus with the Garamantes, and sometimes were purely military responses to threats, as with Balbus and Flaccus. Archaeological discoveries in the Sahara and Sahel, including coins, pottery, and inscriptions, provide evidence that Roman influence reached much further south than the empire's official borders might suggest. Yet, despite these daring journeys, Rome never fully conquered or colonized the regions beyond the desert. There are several reasons for this. First, the Sahara itself was an enormous barrier. Supplying large armies across such a harsh environment would have been nearly impossible with ancient logistics. Water was scarce, temperatures extreme, and routes difficult to navigate. Even when caravans succeeded, they depended heavily on local knowledge and cooperation with desert tribes. Second, disease and climate presented challenges. Tropical illnesses in sub-Saharan regions were unknown to Romans and could have devastated troops. Third, the cost often outweighed the potential profit. Sea voyages between North African ports and Rome could be completed in less than a month and were far safer and more efficient than sending expeditions across deserts and mountains. Maritime trade routes therefore remained the backbone of Roman commerce with Africa. Lastly, the empire already faced significant pressures on other frontiers. Defending the Rhine-Danube and eastern borders required enormous resources. Africa beyond the Sahara, though rich in mystery and potential wealth, simply did not warrant the same level of investment. Nevertheless, the legacy of these expeditions is significant. They reveal how ambitious and curious the Romans were, and how interconnected ancient Africa already was through trade networks long before European colonialism. They also show that Rome's relationship with Africa was not only one of conquest, but also of commerce and cultural exchange. Goods from deep within Africa reached Roman markets, and in return, Roman coins and artifacts found their way far beyond the Mediterranean world. In the end, the Roman frontier in Africa remained, along the coasts and the Nile Valley. The Sahara served as a boundary that Rome respected even as it probed across it from time to time. The expeditions into the desert and beyond were bold but ultimately limited. They remind us that even the most powerful empire of the ancient world had its limits. The Roman dream of directly controlling the wealth of sub-Saharan Africa never became a reality. But the glimpses gained from these journeys left an enduring mark on Roman knowledge and imagination. They spoke of distant rivers, lakes filled with exotic animals, and lands rich with gold. For Rome, these lands remained places of wonder and possibility beyond the edge of empire.